These guys are still going strong despite my neglect and the fact that they don't have the best of material. They did at least get all this, because I do think, knowing that I was thinking that I was going to harvest them out, harvest the castings and move these guys, that I didn't want to add paper, but kind of had to. And really that was the better way to go, because you say a month later, that gives them more to feed on. And you see that while there were a lot of worms in the bin, a nice amount, there was quite a cluster over here. So from the smell of it, I don't know what these little black seeds are. I fed them a citrus, but I don't see any evidence of it. So alright, they're still doing great. And now what's going to happen is, like I said, I just wanted to dive in here together and have us all take a look at the bin before I transfer. I think I'm going to transfer them scoop by scoop instead of just like dumping it out. Alright, so cool. They're doing pretty awesome. For those who don't know, I started this bin almost a year ago. It was either 18th or 19th of September 2024. And I started with 67 blue worms November 6th. I had like 120 to 140 individuals, and I'm not going to count them now. I think it's fair to say that there's a lot, and I'm sure there's at least 500, but I would say they're more than ready for an increase in space. All right. So let me try to figure out where I'm going to put. Okay. All right, we've brought up the new bin and its ultimate stench. So could use the dry mix scoop. Because this bin is so heavy, it's breaking the handle. Oh, I'm going to leave this where it's at. I want a bigger scoop though than this, but that's what we'll use. I could just use my hand. However, I don't want to drop anybody. We got this little piece of wood that's going with them. Maybe actually we'll get the new. I'm remembering that last time I think they were pretty disturbed when I dug through the bin. Or do I want to put this on top? Because I might still try to harvest the castings. And if this is on top, then it also helps me to signify, you know, when these guys, when I get down to the paper, I'll be like, okay, this is the end of the castings. Because I thought maybe it'd be nice for them to, you know, kind of transfer over from that paper to the new paper. All right. So, this is great. I'm finally getting this done. I've been talking about doing this for a very long time. I want to say at least 6 months. And while I just naturally assumed that a regular size storage tote would be a lot bigger than the bin they're in, it doesn't, you know, when you say the bin they're currently in is 18 by 15 by 11, and this is 24 by 16 by 16. Yeah, that's a significant increase. At the same time, you know, when I was imagining that it was going to be huge, it's not quite. I guess we'll see how much this fills it. And maybe, no, I was about to think counterintuitively, like, oh, I should give them food so that now when they're comfortable, they'll move out and it'll be more enticing for them to have to go to the food. And it's not that far, like the kale leaf is kind of right here. Look at all these guys. A bunch of worms there, a whole bunch. The light isn't much good, is it? This far away. But, oh, so I was saying that I was worried when I was in here last because I had, they just seemed really a lot more disturbed by me, and a lot more of them were crawling out than I'm used to. And that might just simply be because their numbers have grown. That before they weren't quite as many of them. That one just jumped like a jumping worm. He just went crazy. I was trying to get it off the rim of the... Okay, so this has a little bit of the paper in it. We're almost done over here. It's filling it up quite a bit. Quite a bit. But yeah, I was worried. I'm like, are these guys going to start escaping, which I've never had problems with before. I mean, they do move, don't get me wrong, but I've never had a mass exodus. This is the first time that I've ever had a bin that was only blue worms, although I saw at least two either European night crawlers or red wigglers. So I don't know if they came in on some material or if they traveled. But That's new. But yeah, that being said, I've never had just the blue worms, and I've moved. I'm near the other bins right now, but I'm on the other side of the basement from the other bins, so I've been, part of my stalling is because I've been a little bit intimidated about moving them and where am I going to move them, and I need to make a spot for them. And has it just been a happy place? Let's see. Trying to zoom in a little bit. There's a bunch of worms right here. Has it just been, the magic spot that they've never escaped because they've been happy? Like I said, they're in my other bins, but this is the first I've had of all blues. So hopefully, this is near a window. So, but hopefully moving them does not result in my first mass exodus. Hopefully they're happy here. We're clearly going to find out sooner than later. But we're almost to the bottom, except that there's a whole lot of worms that I'm gonna have to scrape out. Yeah, I figured this was easier and also just the lazier way than I was thinking about baiting them out and then getting a look at, the worms themselves. I could measure it, but then I was like, why don't you just move all that material into the bin, the new bin, and let the worms move over as they see fit. Look at all those guys. Lots of worms. See how inchwormy they move versus their cousin, versus, I guess they might not be cousins. The other composting worms. The night crawlers and the European night crawlers. Because if you don't already know, I do have Canadian night crawlers. They are an even younger bin than these guys. The Canadian night crawlers I started in January of this year. Look at all these guys. This was in the corner where the feeding had occurred. That's a lot. So yeah, they're still doing really, really well. That's awesome. There's so many on my hand. It's down enough to where I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna grab probably 2 more handfuls of castings. Well, castings and worms. But then there's so many worms left behind. Like, come on, guys. I really gotta sit here and pick you all out. Yeah, so that filled it up. Sure did. So when you look at it like that, this is, I'd say about a quarter of this side has other material in it. So this filled up the rest of the way. So about 3/4 of this half. So this bin is still significantly, you know, it's twice as much material. Because even if that had been empty, even if it's less than a quarter, this still filled, you know, half. So we're doubling their space. I think that's pretty awesome for them. And I mean, that being said, this is also, this stuff is pretty compact versus the new material. So yeah, now I need to scrape all of these worms off the side as gently as possible. Trust me, guys. I think you'll be much happier over here. They're so skinny. These guys are really small. So they're not the best and biggest blue worms out there, but I guess that's to be expected given the size of that bin and that they hadn't been fed in a while. And you know, you say this, I've never harvested, you know, from this bin, and it's almost a year old. And I could have harvested, I'd say, I could have harvested 3 months ago. So they've not had the best of conditions to develop in, and yet their numbers are significant. It's just their size is not. But we'll see how they do in this new bin. This is pretty exciting, if you ask me. Don't you think it's exciting? I think it's very exciting because on so many levels, I've been meaning to do this. And I just, you know, it's cool to be able to provide them with a bigger home. And now I have 6. Well, actually the Canadian nightcrawler bin's even bigger than this one. So this is the 5th. Pretty sure they're all 16 to 18 gallons. And then the Canadian nightcrawler bin is a little bit bigger. So this is the 5th big bin. Question now is, what do I do with this bin? Do I just return it to normal human functions? This little green bin? Or do we check on the cocoons that we collected in the summer, and then I counted and never posted that, and then I've neglected them. And then I have the 500 cocoons that I just completely forgot about. Are they even alive? That would be amazing if they were, to be totally honest. Do I move them in here? And then I would have 6.5 bins. Oh man, as addicting, as fun as the worms are, especially in the winter when I don't have gardening going on, I really don't need to be adding more bins. I know that sounds crazy, but you know, starting bins isn't quite like collecting seeds. I do feel like there's a cap to be had. Because even if I had more space, I'm not sure if how many more bins I would want to run, because I'm not selling worms, I'm not selling castings, I'm not doing this commercially at all. So look, there's somebody climbing over there. And this year I have not used castings in the garden the way I normally do. So I really have a bunch of castings when you consider that I'm pretty sure bin number 3 needs to be harvested. 4 and 2 were basically, I'd considered them harvested, although by this point you never know. I think 1 is fully harvested now. So yeah, really I only have 1 more bin. And actually the Canadian nightcrawler bin looks like it should be harvested. I mean, there was a lot of potting soil that I added to that mix, but... And I wonder how they do with harvesting. And... because there's not a lot of... I'll have to look again, but there's not a lot of other worm farmers sharing regular content about raising Canadian nightcrawlers. So we'll have to check on them too, because I've been, if you missed that, I recently counted them a couple weeks ago, I think. And I've been impressed. This was a hot summer. And so the basement is like between 72 and 74 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, I don't know off the top of my head, but like 23 or something. Somewhere mid-20s Celsius. Sorry. I'm sure I'll put that on the screen. And so that's pretty warm for the Canadian nightcrawlers. So all of my other bins survive the winter, even as it gets cold down here. It never drops below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And they all do fine. Their numbers slow. The blue worm numbers in the bins, they kind of drop, but they all do fine. So if Canadian nightcrawlers prefer, 50 to 60 degrees, then, and I think not below 40, then I suspect they'll do quite well. They should be happy. Question is, what am I doing with my Canadian nightcrawlers? Because they're so much bigger. It was really just about... Anyways. Stay tuned for that. Maybe I sell some to some fishermen. Maybe. I think I've got all the worms out of here. So I might wind up using the old bin for think. Yeah, I might wind up using the old bin for a new for the cocoons that I counted. I was just gonna put them. Anyways, I'm do I put dry paper on top, or do I just kind of sprinkle some of this? Because I am going to put the blankets back over. But we'll Well, this stuff, we'll give them a little bit of cover, when in actuality, I don't necessarily want them. This stuff needs to dry out. These castings, this old material needs to dry out. And that water was dumped in here, but this stuff isn't that wet. That kale's much closer to the surface than I want. So I'm not worried about, I don't think that the water that I dumped out into the bucket is a problem in here at all. Because again, there's dry material at the bottom. This stuff isn't super wet. Yes, it is going to get wet. It is going to be still somewhat sloshy under there. But we have room to play. Because this stuff needs to dry out, sure. So we don't really need this to absorb more. But this needs to absorb more moisture. And I think that the worms will, you know, we also need that super dry stuff at the bottom to be wet and to start breaking down, because it being dry, like, it's dried for because it can be, you know, and it's not degrading on its own. I'm gonna need to like rinse this off, because I'd like to get just one whole bubble mailer blanket, but so yeah, that dry stuff needs help. Anyways, so really that extra water down there is necessary. And that being said, I'll leave some of it uncovered. That should also encourage them to leave a little bit of an air pocket over here to move over into the new stuff, because it's more covered. And last but not least, the cardboard blankets. Again, we'll kind of do the same thing. Kind of just cover them more over on the left side. Awesome. All right. Well, now I need to feed bin 2. I need to feed kind of everybody, but bin 2 I feel like particularly. I haven't checked in on them in a while. Well, this was a long video, a lot longer than I intended for it to be, but yay! I'm excited. Fantastic. We have officially upgraded the blue worms into their own 18-gallon 18-gallon tote. 18 gallons, which is 24 by 16 by 16 and a half. 18 gallons is 68.2 liters. So they've got twice as much space as they had before. A little less than that, but it feels like twice as much, okay? I think it's twice as much. But, well, actually, that material, let me take that back. That material was really, like I said, it was really compact, and so it was really only filling, I'm looking at the line, 2/3, half to 2/3 of the old bin. So if that bin had been more full, then it would have taken up much more room. But still, anyways. All right, sweet. Let's go see what the other guys are up to. Let me know what you think. It's also going to be exciting to see this many blue worms in this much space. I think it's going to be super fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and your interest. Be safe, be well, and bye for now.